Welcome to First Chapter Fridays. For this week's edition, we will listen to the first chapter of the book Da Vinci's Cat by Gilbert Murdock. So sit back, relax, and use your imagination as we listen to the first chapter from this book. Federico leaped to his feet, reaching for his knife, though he was still half asleep. "Papa!" he shouted. "Alarms!" A face loomed at him out of the darkness. But Federico had no knife at his waist, not even a belt. Oh, he exclaimed, lowering his arms in relief. That face was not an enemy, but only an antique statue, a gift from his mother. She lived far from the north with Papa and Federico's sisters, in a castle with 500 rooms. Federico, however, had dwelled this past year in Rome, in a villa that served as his prison. Again, alarms blared. No, not alarms, but trumpets announcing the next course of a banquet. Laughter drifted through his window, and the scents of mustard sauce, mutton, onions, spicy oysters, fish, roasted with citrus. Musicians toddled and tangled. Between the slats of the shutter, Federico could see a courtyard graced with tall marble sculptures and slim cypress trees, and a table crowded with diners. Even now, a gesture backflipped along the tabletop, flicking the candles with his toes. Federico himself should be out there with the other guests, hooting at the gesture's antics. But this afternoon, he'd gone to bed with a headache. Now, the trumpets had startled him awake, his headache replaced by irritation, and no small amount of hunger. He could, he supposed, slink down and join the meal. But a gentleman did not slink. A gentleman made an entrance at the proper moment, to the approval of the crowd. To show up like a fretful child after a nap? Besides, he wasn't a child. He had 11 years. He was almost a man. Glumly, Federico studied the scene, the flickering candelabras, the glint of crystal and silver, and bowls of perfumed water and floating petals. Gems twinkled on the guests' fingers, on their caps, in their hair. Once more the trumpet sounded as footmen carried in a platter with a roasted boar's head coated in gold. The sight of the boar doubled Federico's hunger. The cherry sauce smelled so good. He must eat. But what? Not his elegant silk bedspread, or the portrait of his father in shining black armor, or his school books and pens and ink. The travel chest might contain something. It was nearly the size of a coffin, meant to hold all the items needed for a long stay such as his. Federico dug through the layers, careful not to snag his rings. There, a pot of sugared almonds. They only took the edge off his appetite. He frowned as he swabbed out the last of the sugar. At home, he could sneak to the kitchens for candied lemons or spiced bonbons and syrup. But no chef in Rome would make the effort to preserve such luxuries for him. Federico sighed, belly rumbling. He wanted something sweet. Fruit even. Grapes or figs. Figs! But of course! This very morning he'd seen a platter of figs in the Pope's new study. Federico had been sitting for hours as Master Raphael Sanzio painted his portrait onto the wall, and the figs were a nice interruption. He and Raphael had eaten several and left the rest on a windowsill. Again, Federico's belly growled, for a moment drowning out the snores of his governess in the next room. But the figs were all the way in the Pope's palace. Should he wander so late without servants or guards, without even waking Celeste? His stomach grumbled an answer, yes. Quickly, Federico pulled on silk breeches and hose. They did not match, but no one would see him. He strapped on a knife belt and tied a cloak around his shoulders, for a gentleman without a cloak might as well be naked. Setting a cap on his blonde curls, he took up the lantern that Celeste kept burning just in case, and tiptoed out the door. Federico might be a hostage, kept in Rome to guarantee his family's loyalty to His Holiness, Pope Julius II. But that did not mean he was trapped in his room. The villa in which Federico resided sat on a high, breezy hill, almost a quarter-mile from the Pope's palace. His Holiness had recently decided to link the two buildings with a long corridor in order to impress his guests. The corridor was still very much under construction, however, and a few but Federico used it. Workmen stored planking there and unwanted furniture. At this hour, the moon gaped through the half-built roof. Federico's lantern made eerie shadows out of ladders and stacks of tiles and a man hulking by the wall. Federico jumped back, heart pounding. It wasn't a man, just a wooden box. Thank heavens his sisters weren't here, for they would have been frightened, but not him. Still, he averted his eyes as he crept past the box. At last, he reached the end of the corridor and the heavy door to the palace. The Pope's palace, too, was under construction. Every room and hallway requiring some new decoration or shape. Federico had to sidestep boxes of tools and tubs of quicklime as he made his way to the Pope's new study. He reached for the door and sniffed. Unwashed feet, dirty clothes, greasy hair. He knew those smells. "Master," he called, wrinkling his nose. "Michelangelo." The study door burst open. "Who is it?" Michelangelo glared down, fists clenched. "Federico, what do you want?" What a strange creature Michelangelo was. The greatest sculptor in the world, more talented than even the ancients. But his pride drove away admirers, and his misery drove away friends. Years of looking up to paint the Sistine Chapel ceiling had left his neck permanently crooked. Long ago, he had his nose broken for bragging, and his father had warned him never to bathe. Michelangelo wasn't handsome to begin with, but with his mangled face and his stink. "Good evening, master," Federico bowed, breathing through his mouth. Why was Michelangelo here? "I've come to admire my portrait." That sounded more respectable than admitting to hunger. Hunger was what poor people felt. He slipped past Michelangelo into the study. Sheets covered the bookcases and the floor. Rough platforms allowed painters to reach upper walls. There, on the windowsill, the platter. Ah, figs! He held the platter out. Would you like some? Michelangelo waved the fruit away. Your portrait, he scoffed. Portraits aren't art. Sometimes they are. Federico's eyes went to a handsome blond boy above the door. One small painted figure tucked into a scene of 50 odd philosophers. Such a joy it is to include you, Raphael said as he applied the finishing touches. You look wise beyond your years. Michelangelo glared at the crowded wall. Everything that Peacock knows, I taught him. Peacock was Michelangelo's name for Raphael, to mock Raphael's fine clothes. Federico almost choked on a fig. I didn't know Master Raphael was your student. I didn't say he was my student. I'd never allow such a thing. He simply takes, like a hole in a bucket draining me empty, like a leech sucking out blood. Ah, Federico lowered the platter. Now he felt queasy. Michelangelo scoured at an image of a philosopher displaying his theory of harmony. What do you and Raphael talk about? Do you two talk about me? Though only 6 and 30, the artist's face held lines of misery. He reeked of sweat and old boots. Federico risked another fig. Mostly, we talk about his holiness. Raphael likes to hear about him throwing the backgammon table. Federico played backgammon with the Pope and often won. The Peacock is desperate to see the Sistine Chapel, you know. But I'll never allow it. Michelangelo glowered at the wall, the figures so perfect that they were almost breathing. Away he stomped, trailing stink. Well, that was interesting, Federico thought as he headed back to the villa. What was Michelangelo's doing in the Pope's study in the middle of the night? The palace decorations were Raphael's assignment, nothing to do with him. Federico gasped as the truth hit him. Michelangelo had been spying. The great master secretly studying young Raphael. What a delicious bit of gossip. But whom could Federico tell? Celeste talked so much that she had no time to listen. The few children in the palace worked as pages or cook boys, far below his rank. A duke's son did not socialize with commoners. The footmen, his tailor, the jester, the cupids painted on the ceiling? No. Though Federico knew many souls in Rome, he had no one to call a friend. He pondered this sad truth, gloomily chewing the last fig, as he trekked down the corridor. Somewhere in the distance, the church of St. Mary Major rang midnight, the mournful sound matching his mood. Grovel scratched beneath his slippers. His lantern barely dented the black. The stars watched him coldly. How he wished for the company of his little sisters. How he wished to be home. Not for the first time, he thought about running away. Such a crime, however, would bring his whole family shame. No, he must remain captive in Rome until His Holiness saw fit to release him. What was that? Federico spun, drawing his knife. Pearly moonbeams pierced the darkness, lighting pyramids of floor tile and stacks of planks and the tall wooden box by the wall. He frowned. What was that box doing here? It must have arrived this afternoon, during his nap. Screwing up his courage, Federico eased closer, knife in hand. The box, some kind of closet, was a fine piece to be sure, with gems set into smooth walnut wood. Someone had paid well for the carpentry. A scratching, faint but insistent from beyond the door. Federico leaped back, his mouth dry. Be gone! More scratching. Federico would give half his country for a friend right now. Meow. Oh, heavens! It was only a cat trapped in this fancy carved closet. With a snort of relief, Federico sheathed his knife. Come out, he called, lifting the latch. A kitten thrust its way out, tail quivering. Meow! A kitten as tawny as a lion with black-tipped ears. He scooped her up, and she purred in his hands. Her amber eyes, lined in black, like the eyelids of Egyptians, shone in the lantern light. Her kitten teeth were no thicker than needles. Meow! Greetings, Federico bowed. I am Sir Federico Gonzaga, son of Duke Francesco II and Lady Isabella of Ferrara. Meow! The kitten reached out a paw as soft as a kiss to tap his nose, and wiggled to be free. Certainly, my lady, I would not detain you. Federico set her down, and she bounced across the floor, rolling like a gesture. A far better gesture than anyone at the banquet. He laughed, clapping. He could spend the rest of his life watching this. Abruptly, she stopped to lick a paw as if to say, Me? Tumble? Never. She spotted a bit of feather and crouched, creeping toward it. She sprang. Captured! Exclaimed Federico. Oh, you are too clever. She scrambled down the corridor with the determination of a tiny racehorse and careened back, bouncing off his ankles. Meow, she boasted, her whole body purring. A proper sprinter you are, Federico petted, though we need to work on your turns. The kitten pranced away, and suddenly her back arched, fur bristling, as she skittered on, tiptoed toward him, hissing through her kitten teeth. Oh, you are fierce. I'm quite frightened. He hid behind his cloak to demonstrate. She batted at the cloak's hem, climbing his legs. Ow! He laughed, setting her down. Those hose are silk. She wandered toward the closet, batting the door. Meow? Federico jumped to open it. Sniffing the air, the kitten toddled in. He closed the door with a bow. My lady, and he threw it open. For you. No kitten emerged. Kitten, he peered into the closet. Nothing there. Federico scrambled for the lantern. Where are you? He knelt, running his hands along the wood. He shone the lanterns into the corners, onto the doors with its gems. No kitten. Only strange symbols in black ebony and white holly wood. He stepped back, panic rising. Kitten! Somewhere in the distance, people laughed and strummed. But in the corridor, only silence. Silence and the tolling bells of Santo Sprinto. A sob welled in Federico's chest. Where are you? He should smash this closet to bits, shatter the gems with the butt of his knife, then stomped on the fragments. Such strangeness wasn't right. Kitten! The last notes of Santo Spirito faded into silence. The bells of San Agostino began, and of Santa Ruffin, for every church in Rome has its own version of midnight. Federico gulped lungfuls of air. Was this a dreadful prank? Witchcraft? Something evil? With great sadness he shut the door. Goodbye, kitten. It would be a long walk indeed to the villa. The lantern hung from his hand like 100-pound weight. Never in his life had he felt so alone. Meow? He dashed back, threw open the door. A cat sauntered out. A full-grown cat with a coat like a lion, her eyes lined in black. She gazed up at him. Meow? She asked, but with a cat's voice, not a squeak. The cat threaded through his legs, rubbing his calves with black-tipped ears. He gulped. It's you! But how? Mom? She ambled toward the closet, her amber eyes winking in the lantern light. No more kitten tumbling. Mom? She batted the door. No! Federico snatched her up. That thing's too dangerous. Clutching her to his chest, not caring who heard his footsteps, he ran as fast as he could back to his villa. That completes the first chapter of the Da Vinci's Cat by Catherine Gilbert Murdock. I hope you enjoyed the story. Stop into the library to pick up the book to see how the story ends. Thank you for joining us for this week's First Chapter Friday. I hope you join us next time.